Presentation number 2. My stance on animal rights can best be expressed by a quote from Dr. Temple Grandin, a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. Quote, "I think we can eat meat ethically, but we've got to give animals a good life." End quote. I believe that animals have a deep capacity for emotions, from pain, suffering, happiness, and engagement. Within the last decade, numerous studies have been released proving this point. A study out of London from Queen Mary University showed that goats are able to read facial expressions, and when presented with two pictures, regularly went to pictures of happy, smiling people over those with a neutral expression or mad expression. Another study looking at dog brains under MRI showed very similar structure and function to that of a human brain, supporting the idea that they have a very similar emotional capacity that we do. These and other heart rate studies on animals during stressful situations illustrates their ability to experience fear and pain. The above studies, in addition to others, have greatly shaped my belief that animals have a great capacity for emotion. They are receptive to happiness, joy, empathy, pain, fear, and suffering, and we should do everything in our power to ensure that whether they are companion animals, wildlife, or are intended for slaughter, that they're given the best life possible. On the concept of wildlife, an article published by the Game Management Authority described an ethical hunter as, quote, "a person who knows and respects the game hunted, follows the law. Ethical hunters are familiar with the places they hunt, the wildlife that live there, and the way they should behave when hunting." And I think conventional agriculture can take a lot away from this. All good ethical hunters conduct themselves with the future of the sport and the land in mind, never harvesting more than necessary, and with a deep respect for the animals hunted. The irregularity and short season in which these animals are able to be hunted contributes, I believe, largely to the deeper respect for the individual animal. In conventional agriculture, you'll run into constant processing, 365 days a year, with the same workers. And I believe the speed of the processing and the overconsumption of meat causes floor workers and the general public to become numb to the fact that you are taking an animal's life for that product, as it is a byproduct. Grocery stores ensure that there is little connection to the animal as possible. They come neatly wrapped and packed. And when you look at a cut of pork or cut of beef, it's kind of difficult to place it to that animal, unless you do know you did grow up on a farm where you did have the ability to see how this works. In removing the ability to know and respect the animal prior to death, and oftentimes lacks legal oversight on large-scale productions, and ignorance in regards to standard conventional production methods means the majority of consumers, we aren't ethical consumers. And in an effort to combat this, oftentimes activists will go into farms, processing plants, and holding facilities to record and bring to light the injustices that are ongoing in these facilities. Kelly Ludlam, with the American Farm Bureau Federation, who's Director of Congressional Relations, worries that this undercover activism could cause some major issues. Quote, "The group cautions that some methods represent best practices endorsed by animal care experts, and to the general public that's uneducated in these veterinary procedures or just general care procedures, they could, without a further knowledge of the science, come across as mistreatment. And almost always with these activism videos, you see what's going wrong, not what's going right. So this is an issue of greater miseducation, ignorance, and just uninformed consumers. This leads us to a greater need to educate the public on both veterinary procedures and how our meat is produced, to explain the science behind these sometimes seemingly harmful without prior knowledge or understanding of the procedure, that really do help the animal. A lot of the time, cattle are put into chutes that are very small and they apply pressure. However, studies by Dr. Temple Grandin have shown that animals are actually calmer with this gentle pressure and enclosed space. However, to someone who doesn't know this research, it could look as you're scaring the cattle, they're more fearful, you're forcing them into a small area, when in fact the opposite is true. You're actually calming the animals and putting them into a smaller, more enclosed area. As consumers, it's our responsibility to be informed in what we purchase, consume, and promote. In Peter Singer's report, All Animals Are Equal, he makes a valid point on promoting animal rights. Singer states that, quote, the extension of the basic principle of equality from one group to another does not imply that we must treat both in exactly the same way, or grant exactly the same rights to both groups. Whether we should do so will depend on the nature of the members of the two groups. The basic principle of equality, I shall argue, is equality of consideration, and equal consideration for different beings may lead to different treatment and different rights. And this is very true. Equality does not mean uniformity. A cow will have different needs than that of a chicken. A horse different needs from that of a cow. Chickens and turkeys in themselves are completely different. And so you cannot make a cookie cutter system because all of these animals are so unique. And while some animals to us are more important than others, like the majority of people value their dogs and cats more than livestock, does not mean that dogs and cats should receive more special treatment. All animals should have access to shelter, warmth, good nutrition, and a largely pain and fear-free existence. We, as a society, are responsible for being a voice for the voiceless, ensuring that we acknowledge all capacities for emotion, and trying to avoid wrongdoing. We cannot settle for good enough. If we're going to continue as a culture to consume meat and keep animals, we must do so mindfully. And that may mean eating less or buying locally from the source on animals you know that received good welfare. And we must allow for continuous improvements to animal welfare and comfort. How we treat our animals is an immediate reflection of who we are as a society. There is extensive research into the emotional capacity of animals, and to disregard them now would be a blatant disregard of what is undoubtedly morally right. All animals, regardless of location, have the right to live a life free from pain, fear, and suffering, regardless of their purchase. Whether a wild animal in Brazil, a cow on a feedlot in Montana, or a cat in your own house, they should not have any different treatment. They should all be given an equal opportunity to a good life, regardless of the end result. For everything they have given to us, we owe them at least this much: the chance at a good life and a good existence. Thank you.